Spider-Man Hostile Takeover. Chapter 32. Bingham had no way of knowing how long he had been in the lab. There were no newspapers or television broadcasts. The TV didn't work like the one in the other room, where he could just turn it on and there would be shows. Here, there was nothing on at all unless he chose something. At first he was glad not to have to argue with anyone about what he watched. He could sit in his room and watch what he wanted for as long as he wanted, or even watch the same thing over and over again. After the fun of that wore off, however, he began to get lonely. The doctors and techs and guards didn't make conversation with him. When he asked if he could go back into his old room, he was told there was no one left there. They were all gone. That meant they had died. He knew that, but he didn't want to say it out loud. And it took away from what was really good. They had died, yes, but Bingham had survived. He could do what none of the others could do. He could live. His mind was working differently. He knew that. They gave him tests where he had to answer questions or write things down, or pick shapes, or talk about pictures. He didn't always understand the tests, but he could tell he impressed them. He never done well on tests before, and he liked the feeling. His body was changing too. He had grown lean and muscular, even though he hadn't worked hard to get it that way. He hadn't changed how he ate, and he never lifted weights except when the lab techs asked him to. It happened from the medicine. He could jump now, crazy distances that made no sense. And he could climb walls, even smooth ones. Sometimes they made him fight the guards, and at first he hated it. Bingham had always hated fighting, because he would get hurt. He wasn't getting hurt anymore, and he discovered he liked being good at fighting. These guys would come in with their shirts off, trying to look tough with their big muscles, but Bingham was stronger. He was faster. He somehow knew what they were going to do before they did it. His body reacted without him telling it what to do. "When can I fight again?" he would ask the director. And the director would smile like he had a secret. One time he attacked the director. He didn't remember it well. It was like there had been a fog in his mind. The guards must have stopped him, though, because the director kept coming. Each time he entered with guards already pointing their guns. Bingham understood things that people said, but he also understood what they meant when they said nothing. That was new, too. He was smarter now. It was like the medicine had cleared the fog away. He could see things in a way that he had never seen them before, and he would make connections. They would serve him a hamburger, and instead of just eating it, he would understand things about hamburgers, like where it had come from and how someone had to cook it. He would suddenly realize that all the hamburgers he'd ever eaten had become part of him. That he was part hamburger. Not all of him, but a part. He couldn't come into contact with something without changing him. And without him changing it, understanding this gave him a kind of power. But he didn't want to use this power yet. Not yet. He was waiting for the right time. One day, the director came into his room. There were 4 guards with him, and they all had guns pointed at Bingham. He didn't mind the guards and the guns. They wouldn't shoot him unless he did something. Though now he looked at them and wondered if he could get the guns away from them without being hurt. In his head, he saw how he could do it. How they wouldn't be able to stop him. But Bingham didn't do it because He was afraid the director might get mad at him. What if they stopped giving him his medicine? That frightened him the most.
The boss is very disappointed with you,
the director said. This upset Bingham. He felt panic and couldn't figure out what he had done wrong. Maybe he should take the guns away from the guards before they did something to him. But Bingham decided to listen a little more to what the director was saying. It was the sort of thing he could understand now that he had never understood before. What did I do?
It's not your fault, Michael,
the director said.
But the medicine doesn't work on you the way the boss wanted it to. He wanted it to cure disease.
Do I have a disease? This was alarming news. Bingham had never felt healthier.
No, you don't. But from the way your body responds to the medicine, we can tell if it would cure the disease. The boss had hoped your body would react one way, but it reacted in another way instead.
It made me able to do things, Bingham said.
Yes, it did,
the director agreed.
Let me ask you a question, Michael. Do you know who Spider-Man is?
Bingham thought about that night on the street. He needed help, but Spider-Man had ignored him. He'd wondered about that for a long time, and he decided that Spider-Man wasn't real. He was like one of those stories about old gods and heroes, but now, Bingham could do so many of the things that Spider-Man was supposed to be able to do. There was really only one conclusion he could draw. He hadn't seen a real person that night. He'd seen his own future. I'm Spider-Man, Bingham said. The director said nothing for a very long time. He looked at Bingham and blinked a great deal. A sure sign he was trying to figure something out. Bingham noticed that sort of thing now.
I think the boss will be happy to hear that,
he said at last. After that, they began giving him a lot more of the medicine, and they began his training in a very different way.